You a trip or me a trip?
What?
You a trip or me a trip?
I gave you one.
Oh, you said, no, I still have to go back there.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready?
An hour later, yes indeed.
Okay, 7 o'clock.
Good evening and welcome to the Crestville City Council meeting, August 8, 2022. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming this evening. I need to begin by announcing that Councilor Shelley Clark has an excused absence for tonight. And now we go to the public forum, and this is a maximum of 30 minutes. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes apiece. The council does not engage in discussion or make decisions based upon the public comment, and the mayor may direct the city manager to follow up on comments that are received. So our first speaker is John V. Young. You come up here to the podium, and do we need address or anything like that, Roberta?
I'm sorry, what?
Do we need address or just
No address.
no address? All right, Mr. Young.
Can you hear me okay?
It didn't sound like it was on. Is the button pushed? Is it right back there? No. There you go.
Is this better? Yes. Well, good evening, council members and audience. I'm here to speak against the permit or to express my concerns about the possibility of Foster Farms reopening their slaughterhouse in our city. I have lived in Creswell for 3 years after having lived in Eugene since 1986. And in those years before 2006, when Foster Farms closed, I used to have this horrible odor traveling on I-5 south from Eugene when I passed Creswell. It was just an awful odor. It was rotting flesh. It was just unimaginable. It was worse than, a paper mill. So anyway, in 2006, Foster Farms ceased operations, and everything settled down, and there was just a lot of residential development in that area, a lot of new homes. And the thing is now with Foster Farms anticipating potentially reopening their slaughterhouse, I think that those folks who have not lived in Creswell for a long period of time are in for a rude awakening. It's going to be a huge problem. So I have a few questions to consider, and then I have a few proposals that to entertain. First of all, I understand that the wastewater permit with DEQ has been applied by Foster Farms, and that's likely to be sanctioned. However, I'd like to know if there are other permits that they will require, or can they just really reestablish business at will? And then a second issue is, if so, can we request that they give like 12 or even 6 months notice before they resume slaughterhouse operations? I have 3 potential questions and proposals to entertain for the council. Number one is it possible to make zoning changes to prevent Foster Farms from reestablishing business as previously in what is now very much a residential zone and also a high school zone? The second one is it possible for the city or even a private coalition to purchase that property from Foster Farms? I know it would be ideal to
Mr.
develop.
Young, that's your 3 minutes, but I'll give you 1 more minute.
Okay,
All right, you move right through it.
thank you. And finally, I've conferred with a few people at DEQ, and this may be an avenue for the council to consider. They said that if we could put in a stipulation, request a stipulation that the permit for wastewater also include odor mitigation abatement measures. And if that's in place, then that would be easier to enforce rather than trying to do it after the permit has been already issued. So anyway, these are my thoughts. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Colleen Stewart.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
I remember all of you from a couple weeks ago. My name is Colleen Stewart and I live in Cresswell. Thank you for providing this opportunity for Cresswell residents to continue to voice our concerns about the possible reopening and expansion of the Foster Farms Slaughterhouse. At the last public hearing on July 25th, I shared many of my concerns. I have 3 more for you to ponder. Significant expansion of housing close to the Foster Farms site since 2006, insufficient water and air regulations, and concern about how to get the truth out to those who rely on social media as their source for local news. When Foster Farms closed its plant in 2006, there weren't nearly as many homes built close to it. It seems to me that this is another compelling reason to not reopen and expand the Foster Farms plant at its current location. I talked to our city manager, Michelle, this last week, and she was going to see if the planning department could clarify how many homes have been built in Cresswell, especially within a 2-mile radius of the site, between 2006 and 2022. I look forward to getting that information. I've heard from a couple of sources. Now on to the second point. I've heard from a couple of sources that there are other states which have more strict regulations controlling water and air quality. Writing to our legislators and encouraging them to work on creating stricter regulations to protect our waterways and the air we breathe seems like an important action related to our concerns. And the third one, I am not on Facebook, but I heard from a couple of people who are on the Cresswell Community Connection that they were led to believe that there was no need to worry about Foster Farms because it was not going to reopen in Cresswell. My response was to remind them that Foster Farms said they have no plans to reopen right now. My point is, how can we get the word out to the community? My husband talked to someone whose parents recently moved into a new home close to the site. They did not know anything about the Foster Farms application for a permit. Anything the city can do to help spread the word would be much appreciated. When my husband and I read in the Register Guard a few weeks ago about Foster Farms seeking to renew its permit for the slaughterhouse in Cresswell, we felt discouraged and full of despair. Since then, we have taken some steps to educate ourselves and speak out. Based on the way I feel now, I must agree with what Joan Baez, a famous folk singer in the 1960s, said. Action is the antidote to despair. I hope we as a community will work together to keep our waterways and air clean for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tom Partridge.
We're a husband and wife team, so just, we don't have the same last name. Okay. Good evening. I'm Tom Partridge and a resident of Cresswell, and I'm here to speak about the water renewal permit Foster Farms is seeking, as well as the possibility they may reopen the slaughterhouse in Cresswell. First, I want to say that I appreciate the action the City Council has taken regarding the Foster Farms water permit. I know from the last meeting that it was discussed and a letter has been written to DEQ for approval by the City Council tonight. I appreciate you taking that action. I have come to realize that the possible reopening of the Foster Farms facility is directly linked to a factory chicken farm there that Foster Farms is trying to open in Scio, Oregon. It's seeming very likely to me that if that operation opens, it's only a matter of time before Foster Farms will want to reopen the Cresswell to process the millions of chickens that will be raised at that site. Just today, I had a conversation with a woman from the group Farmers Against Foster Farms, who are heavily involved in trying to stop this Foster Farms factory chicken farm in Scio due to all the environmental and health concerns. She said that they have been aware of the proposed factory farm and have been working on it for well over a year. They have work groups that meet regularly, many times with state legislators, local farmers, and representatives of Foster Farms. She agreed to send me links to all the activities they are involved with so I can get a feel of how they are working to enhance state laws to protect the environment and make sure it's not a health risk to neighbors of this proposed facility wherever it may be built. My biggest concern right now is that if we as citizens of Cresswell become complacent and wait until Foster Farm applies to reopen here, it may be too late to stop it. I think that the more people who are aware of the situation, the better off we'll be. I also think there are concrete actions that can be taken right now that will help our cause. One, encourage as many people as possible to submit written responses to Trin Hansen at DEQ by the 31st deadline and attend the Zoom meeting for that hearing on August 29th at 4 p.m. We can also write letters, like my wife mentioned, to local legislators asking for their help to make sure that if Foster Farms does reopen here, there are much stricter guidelines for air and water quality than are currently in place. And one other option that we've been talking about is starting a petition asking Cresswell residents who oppose this reopening to sign it. It could make a big difference. If we could get several thousand signatures of local folks who are concerned about the environmental and health issues this plant will cause, it would go a long way to demonstrate our strong opposition to this processing plant. I truly believe that as Cresswell unites behind this cause and opposition, we have our best chance of stopping the return of Foster Farms to our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to item number 2, which is the mayor's report. And I don't have a report for tonight. So we move on to 3, which is correspondence. Councilors, we don't take any action based upon correspondence, but if you wish to have any comments about any items in correspondence, we welcome that. Any comments to be made about the correspondence? Councilor Castillo.
Just a thank you to everyone who took the time to respond their concerns, voice their concerns to the council. And as we just heard, now we've heard you, but now we need to voice our concerns to the public hearing, which will be at the end of the month. So I encourage all to participate. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no additional comments, we move on to number 4, which is the consent calendar. And all items are considered routine and are enacted by a single motion. In the form listed, there is no separate discussion unless the council wishes to pull an item for further consideration for correction. Are there any items that councilors wish to pull from the consent calendar? All right, then I'm entertaining a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented. Councilor Castillo.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second from Councilor Osborne. Any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We move on to the administrative report, to the city manager's report. Manager Amber.
Thank you, Mayor. The first thing is the July bills.
Any questions or comments about July bills? I had one, Manager Amber, and that was the third page on the front. It's the Sierra Santa Fe for $103,000. I was just interested what that was.
You want to take that, Cliff?
That's the chip seal of Emerald Parkway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, road work.
All right. Council members, anything else? All right, Manager Amber?
Okay, the next item is the Lane County Sheriff's calls for service reports. And Sergeant May is here to answer any questions you may have on that.
All right. Council members, do you have any questions for Sergeant May?
Sir?
You already anticipate my question, so I guess I'll get that one out of the way. Curious, turn on my microphone here. So the traditional question about any change in our homeless or transient population here in Crestwell.
Nothing significant.
Second thing I wanted to say was what an excellent job you guys did with your National Night Out.
Thank
That
you.
was fabulous, and I really enjoyed that event. I was pretty tired, and I wasn't thinking I would be able to go. And I just like, well, my son really wanted to check out all of the stuff out there, and he had a really good time. Met the sheriff. Actually, that was my first meeting, the sheriff too. So anyway, it was just a really nice time in the park with Crestwell. To so many families that came out, and I really appreciate the work that the other council and staff put into that, and you guys too. So.
Thanks for the good words.
And then my third thing was that I did notice that there were a few Measure 11 things going on. Is there anything that you could tell us about those?
They're unrelated assaults that rose to a level at which they're Measure 11 crime, and all three of those people went to jail.
Assault related?
All
Yeah,
domestic
I
violence.
read
related,
about
yeah.
some of that in some, I've seen some of this stuff. Yeah. Okay, so I think I know what those were all about then. That's my questions. And
Well, I also want to compliment you on the National Night Out. That was excellent.
Oh, thank you.
It was so well done. And thank you to our Public Safety Committee that was out in Fort Wells. It was really, really good.
Thank you.
Councilor Inman.
Yeah, I just want to thank Sergeant May. It was a good night. There was a lot of families that attended and some new activities. The horses and ice cream was popular, so thank you for that. It turned out really well.
Yeah, horses and carbohydrates.
Okay. All right, Councilor Castillo.
Yes, Deputy Sergeant May, off the top of your head, under the vehicle cases or calls, any idea how many of those are related to abandoned vehicles?
I would say, off the top of my head, 3 or 4 of those probably. It wouldn't be significant. Most of those going to be motor vehicle crashes or traffic hazards. I can try and track that individually next month, though.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Manager Amber.
Okay, the next report is the city attorney's report. And it's a pretty short report. Then the code enforcement report. Jerry's been working a lot on noxious vegetation and also neighbor complaints. He did have a raccoon complaint this past couple weeks, that we had a raccoon here at City Hall in a trap. So not quite sure what happened to the raccoon, but we dealt with that as well. And then the building permit recap report is attached as well. And you can see we're starting off at the beginning of the new year, so we're very happy to have Jessica on board. She's doing a great job, and we're looking forward to having our building permit program continue in a good way.
Councilor Parchu has a question.
Thank you, Manager Hamburg. I was thinking about when I saw that we were starting off with the new year, and we have the one column of data, and maybe something that we might want to consider is changing it up to where we can look at the historical and kind of see, because I miss comparing and being able to compare, like, how did we do last month or 6 months ago to where we are. But I'm always excited, of course, for the new year too, so.
Okay.
Something that we might want to talk about, or is that a work session maybe, or is that just something we can maybe ask
Well,
about?
it kind of slowed down last year because we had the permit position open. But yeah, we can throw it back on there for you.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I appreciate that, so thank you.
Councilor Shutt?
Was the special events permit the National Night Out?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for the back page, number 6. So we are to council action items. Number 1 is the second public hearing on the CDBG Housing Rehab Program. Manager Amber.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, we have been, there you are. Andy's here. I was like, oh, Andy's supposed to be here tonight. We have been in partnership with St. Vincent de Paul on a housing rehab program. The housing rehab program is for housing that is in need of rehab, and this program has been very successful, and I'm going to let Andy talk about it.
Sure.
He's the expert.
Should I go up here?
Yes, please.
Well, good evening, all. Thanks for having me. I'll try to be brief. So, first, just a quick, re-overview of the Regional Housing Rehabilitation Loan Program. We, St. Vincent de Paul, started this along with Lane County and then other small communities back in about 2001. And with this grant that we're closing out here this month, Cresswell joined the consortium. So now all small communities throughout Lane County are a member of the consortium, including Lane County itself. Over the years, since about 2001, we've created what we call a revolving loan fund. And so each time we make a loan to a family that owns and occupies their home, and they pay that back, some years later we turn around and do the same thing, which is, critical home repair items. So, the loans are intended for folks who own and occupy their home. They have to own the real estate. So one of the challenges that we still have is we don't really have a source of funding to take care of homeowners in mobile home parks where they're paying space rent. But other than that, we're able to help quite a few homeowners with a great deal of repairs. For this particular grant, we had 31 applications, and 14 of those ended up being declined or were withdrawn. But 14 of them were approved. 2 of them were served out of our revolving loan fund. So we pretty much we've more than obligated actually all the grant funds. What's happened is we spent more time than what we really would normally take. The grants are a 2-year cycle. We were having a lot of troubles getting bids. Homeowners were having troubles getting bids. And so we asked for an extension, which expires at the end of this month. And so, anyway, we were still able to serve about 2 more houses than we'd promised. And one of those reasons is because one of our loans just got paid back, one that we just recently made. We hope that they stay in the revolving fund longer than that. But altogether, like I said, altogether we're going to serve at least 15 houses. 36 people will be have been served out of that. 10 of those are elderly homeowners. Three of those homes received accessibility measures. So it's not just rehabilitation. We can also do things to help make it easier for people to use their home. And quite a number of electrical safety type repairs. Our single largest, pretty much this is the way it is all the time, are roofs. About 13 of the 15 homes that we served needed a new roof. And so You know, that's, if folks here in the audience or if you here on the council know of people that need some help, you know, have them get a hold of us. Even though our grant funds are out, like I say, we have a revolving loan fund, and sometimes we can serve people out of that. So anyway, that's just kind of a quick recap of the program.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? All right, thanks.
No, thank you.
As part of the program, we have to have a second public hearing on how the community development block grant monies have been spent. And so this is the second public hearing before we do a closeout of the grant.
Okay, so we're going to have the public hearing. We've had the report from Andy Clay. Thank you very much. And now we have the public hearing. So the public hearing is open on CDBG Housing Rehab Program funds. And we wish to hear from anyone in the audience who would like to comment on how the CDBG money was being spent. So if you would like to speak to that, we need to have you fill out a form, correct, Roberta?
That's correct.
If you want to speak to that, pick up a form right back, fill it out right now, bring it up to Roberta, and you may speak. Otherwise, we will hold the public hearing open for 1 minute.
Fill out everything on here. You've already got this information.
How about you speak first and then you can fill it out?
Okay. Should I do it now?
Yes, you may. Tell us your name.
My name is Colleen Stewart. So I have never been a recipient of CDBG, but I worked for St. Vincent de Paul for 9 years before I retired, and worked some with Andy. And I can assure you St. Vincent de Paul does great work. And I was involved in another home rehab possibility for people, for paying for home rehab. And I used to work with families that were struggling, and it's very sad to see homes that people want to fix but they can't. And so I think it's a wonderful program. So that's all I have to say.
We will keep it open for just a little bit longer in case there's anyone else wishing to speak. The public hearing is now closed. And since there is no action required of the council on this, we move to item number B on the council action items, which is to approve a letter to the DEQ regarding Foster Poultry Farm Incorporated Water Quality Permit Renewal. This is an item that was discussed at the last council meeting. And it was determined that I would write a letter reflecting what we heard and what the concerns were that we voiced. And so you've all received a copy of that letter. So what we need to do is fine tune it or accept it as is and send it off once you vote to send it off. So I want to hear any comments or things that you think need to be different or added into it. And Bear in mind that I'm only here for another day and a half, so if it's gonna be changed, it's gotta be changed. I'll have to change it quickly. But if I can get your comments on that, your input, I would welcome that right now. Councilors? Councilor Pratchett.
Well, first and foremost, my comment, Mayor, is what a great job you did on the letter, and thank you so much for taking the time necessary to put all that together, because it's quite a bit of information. So, as I mentioned the other day, I wouldn't change a thing. I thought it looked great. So, I have no suggested changes myself. But thank you for putting that together, and now we have a date that we can know and tell other people about too, which is also another thing that we can do as a council and promote that, so, thanks.
Okay. Other council members? Councilor Castillo?
I think it's a well-crafted letter, and I'm very pleased with it. And but I do have one question. Is it an appropriate time to ask it?
Yes, any questions or comments?
I don't think we were clear on whether this letter was going to be read at the public hearing.
There is no public hearing.
For DEQ.
Oh, whether DEQ will read it?
Or will, I guess my question is, would you do us the honor, Mayor, of reading the letter at the DEQ hearing?
I can do that.
Thank you, sir.
Now, I think actually there was a question raised whether I would read it aloud tonight as well. So members of the public, this letter is sitting right over there on the edge of the dais. There are copies of the letter. We made copies for anyone who would like to pick one up tonight. If you'd like to pick one up.
Thank you.
So council, would you like this letter to be read aloud? Or it's your preference? You've all had the copy? Okay. So, okay, so if there's not any other additional questions or comments, then I'm entertaining a motion to approve the letter as presented. Councilor Osborne.
I'm going to try this. I make a motion that we approve the letter to Trent Hansen, DEQ Water Quality Permit Count Coordinator, as written by Dave Strom.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Councilor Inman. All right, any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. So then I will direct Manager Amberg to have this sent on to Trent Hansen. And I'm planning to be online the 29th. So I will plan to read this aloud. Okay, thank you. We move to item C, which is adoption of a resolution and ordinance related to silo siding manufacture and use in Crestwell. Manager Amber.
Thank you, Mayor. This got put on the agenda backwards. It's actually a resolution followed, or it's actually an ordinance followed by a resolution. So the ordinance that is presented to you is a prohibition of psilocybin businesses within the city of Crestwell. And if that passes unanimously tonight, then the resolution would be before you to place it on the ballot for November. And I have our city attorney here to answer any questions you may have on this item.
And our city attorney tonight is Rebecca Dorman, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
she is. Rebecca, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Thank you, Mayor Strand. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, I am here to answer any questions that you may have and that I can possibly answer. This program was adopted by the voters of the state in 2020. And you have heard about this already in a previous meeting, but just to refresh everyone. So for the past almost 2 years, Oregon Health Authority has been working to adopt rules to roll this program out. And one of the issues that has come up is that OHA is not completely done making those rules. And so there's a little bit of uncertainty about what the manufacturer of psilocybin might really look like in the city, and what the service centers where individuals could go and be treated with psilocybin, what those kinds of places might actually look like. And OHA is still working on those rules, as I said. So cities do have the option to place a prohibition on the manufacturer and the service centers that are authorized by state law. The prohibition could be indefinite until there's political will to go in a different direction within the city. But in order to, quote unquote, opt out of this program, it is required that the city adopt an ordinance and then put the ordinance before the voters at the general election, the November 8th, 2022 general election. There is an opportunity to do it again at any general election. So this isn't the only chance to do this. But if the city chooses not to, there is the possibility that manufacturers, service centers locate within the city in that 2-year period between this general election and the 2024 general election. And so the permanent ban, I don't really think we can say it's a permanent ban, because again, it's up to political will within the city to change it at any point. But there's the option to do the permanent ban, a temporary ban, a ban that would limit the ban maybe for 2 years is kind of the model that we've seen. And the idea behind the 2-year prohibition would be to allow some more of the rulemaking to roll out from the Oregon Health Authority on the program, so the cities have a better idea of what's coming their way. And then also maybe in the meanwhile, cities look at those uses and draft land use or zoning ordinances to best accommodate those uses within the city's jurisdiction. So those are a couple of options, and the ordinance before you tonight is the more permanent ban, but again, it can be repealed, and it's not, actually permanent forever if the political will changes. So I'm going to stop there and then see what questions you have.
Okay, council, questions for Rebecca? So I'll just start. So in 2016, the voters of Creswell said no to marijuana in Creswell. And then, I believe it was a year later, a company decided to set up shop in Creswell, and they collected enough signatures to put it back on the ballot again for a second vote. And this time the Creswell voters voted overwhelmingly not to have it in Creswell. So as you speak of this measure, if we were to place what we're calling a ban, a prohibition, you're saying that if the will of the people of Creswell changed at any point, it could come back. Enough signatures were collected, it could come back on the ballot for another vote, much as happened with the marijuana several years ago. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. I have not researched whether or not a prohibition could be overturned by, I guess it could be. Yes, it is possible. I think the the view I've been taking is more that city council hears from their constituents that in fact they want to roll back the prohibition, and then city council can repeal its ordinance at any time. That's allowed under the statutes. But this is an ordinance, and the voters of the city will have the opportunity to vote on a petition that's put before them by an individual. If they collect enough votes and follow the election law guidelines and get something on the ballot, then sure, the voters in Creswell would be able to hear the question again and decide again.
So then to clarify, the city council would, if the city council passed an ordinance, then the voters in November vote on it, and either they can overturn the ordinance of the city council or they can accept it. And you're saying the city council itself could, in a year or two, reverse the ordinance or change the ordinance. Even if the city has voted to, let's say, approve the ordinance, so the council enacts an ordinance, let's say the city votes yes on that ordinance in November, then you're saying the council themselves could change that ordinance without going to the people again?
Yes, that it is interesting, but that is the way that the statutes are written, that the city council can repeal its ordinance at any time. And, that's definitely a political decision to make, especially if you are in a jurisdiction that supported the prohibition, right? So it's unlikely that the city council would vote to repeal that. But things may change after the program rolls out. Who knows? And it may be something that becomes more palatable.
So, since I'm asking questions and clarifying, a 2-year moratorium, and one of the things I talked with Michelle about, while we don't have a draft of a 2-year moratorium that you prepared, in the LOC packet that we received at our work session, there was a 2-year moratorium LOC in that packet. And as I looked at it today, it's virtually identical with the one that we received from Rebecca. So if the council voted for a 2-year moratorium, put that to the voters. If the voters vote yes, then that means in 2 years, that's the sunset clause we've talked about. In 2 years, then psilocybin, so could then be manufactured and used in Creswell. Manufactured and service centers could be established. If the people vote no on the 2-year moratorium, then that means in January, the law is in effect in Creswell and it would come. Is that correct? So a 2-year moratorium would be in 2 years, it will come, and that would be a yes vote by the people. A no vote would mean in January it would come.
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay? All right, other councilors who have questions? Councilor Inman.
Yes, so I just have a clarifying question. So with the 2 suggested motions that we have, are those paired together? So one is an ordinance and one is a resolution and they go together, or is that they can be separated?
They go together.
Okay.
You have to pass the ordinance first,
And
and then you pass the resolution to put it on the ballot.
Okay, thank you.
But we can pass a different ordinance. We can adjust the ordinance in any way we like, according to the options she presented.
Sure.
Create an ordinance, but if we establish an ordinance, then we have to press a resolution as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, Councilor Pratchett.
Just clarifying what I just heard here. So we could actually do a moratorium rather than a ban by amending our motion this evening. Is that essentially how that would work?
Well, we would have to, probably we'd have to adopt something similar to this tonight.
Okay, so we would just not do the things that we have and do something new, is that what you're saying?
Well, as Rebecca pointed out, there are several options that we have to where we could take the ordinance and tweak the wording at certain points to reflect what we're wanting it to say.
Okay, cool. So the question that I do have though is, you kind of mentioned kind of some ramifications for, say, if we have a situation where we have no ban and people start to do business in Cresswell, doing either manufacturing or offering services. And then if we put a ban in later on down the road, what kind of ramifications does that create for the city, if any? Because we've suddenly taken something that was okay and then not okay. Are they just out of luck, or?
Well, the established businesses would likely be allowed to continue. And so the prohibition that would be later adopted would prevent additional or future businesses from locating. Other than that, the only thing I can think of is just it would be kind of maybe more politically charged potentially, if it's not already, if there are already businesses operating in the community.
Okay, thank you.
And if I was going to add, if we do want to amend the ordinance that's before council to become a 2-year moratorium, we may need to, per the charter, read that amendment aloud. And I don't know if maybe you've already considered that, but I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Councilor Castillo.
So time for my clarifying question. So in regards to the time, place, and manner, so that can be decided anytime, no matter what we decide, correct?
Yes, I think it makes the most sense if there's going to be a temporary prohibition or no prohibition at all. If you could have time, place, and manner regulations kind of waiting on the side if the quote-unquote permanent ban is repealed.
Okay, so then the second part of that question, so if we do have those waiting on the side, so to speak, and they roll out, I mean, they could possibly affect our time, place, and manner, could they not? Since they have not finalized completed their process?
Exactly. That is one of the main reasons why it would be good to fully understand what's coming to craft time, place, and manner regulations.
Yes, it seems like because they're lacking so much or fulfilling this process, I find it hard to feel like I'm really making an informed decision without this whole thing being completed. So anyway, that was my thought, and thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, no problem. I think.
Councilor Inman.
So to follow up with that, so for example, if it went to voters and it was the 2-year hold process, could you then do the regulated place, time, and manner then?
Yes, you could, if the 2-year prohibition, the temporary prohibition is supported by the voters, then the city, ideally would work on time, place, and manner regulations as OHA finishes its rulemaking, and we kind of can see more what these might look like, where they could potentially be located within the city's zoning districts, and maybe look at time, place, and manner regulations as well as amendments to the city's land use development code if needed. So the 2-year period would give the city time to process what's coming from OHA and then make its own more strategic decision making on this program.
Thank you.
Other council input? Okay, so as we go with our continued discussion, if you have any more clarifying questions for Rebecca, we'll be sure and ask as we go. So, what is before us, first of all, is an ordinance. The ordinance that was drafted is a ban on psilocybin, is that correct?
I've heard it pronounced both ways, psilocybin and psilocybin.
Okay, so what we have before us, we have a ban on it. And an ordinance, as you know, requires that it be passed unanimously to go into effect following, if it is to pass at the first reading, it must be by unanimous vote. If it does not pass by unanimous vote, it goes to a second reading. And the ordinance can be read by title only or complete ordinance. And I think Rebecca was recommending that if we change this ban, and we adjusted it some, that whatever adjustments we make then, we should read the entire ordinance so that we get it correct with the changes that we made to it. Does that make sense? So, as you all know, because we received an email from you this afternoon, if we do not pass something tonight, and if the council does want to pass something, then we do have a special meeting in the council that's already been called for tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. And the ordinance that comes back tomorrow, if that's the direction the council chooses to go, would need to be passed by a simple majority vote. Okay? Okay. So now, council members, I'm entertaining a motion on the item that is before us, which is the ban. An ordinance declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products. I'm entertaining a motion. Councilor Shuck.
I move that the City Council adopt ordinance number 552, an ordinance declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
It has to be read twice by title.
Oh, it has to be read twice by title. Thank you.
I move that the City Council adopt ordinance number 552, an ordinance declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor, read twice by title. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Castilla. All right, now we have council discussion of the motion. Councilors. Councilor Shuck.
I'd just like to share my thoughts on this, that I've done a lot of reading since our last work session, and I know that as a hallucinogenic, that this can be used in a mental health facility, and it requires professionals to dose. And because the Oregon Health Authority has not yet set in place what their program is, I feel it's important for Creswell to ban this at this time, because we don't know what this looks like in real life. There recently was a woman in Snohomish County who was under the influence and fell, hit her head, was hallucinating, passed out. There was a Merrill Lynch advisor who walked out his apartment patio and plunged to his death under the same influence, and without knowing what these service centers look like and how long, how the microdosing is done. I would not feel comfortable having this allowed in our city. That's my input. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councilor Shutt. Any other councilors who would like to comment? Councilor Inman.
So, I have to say I'm not in agreement of a ban. I think not knowing the full outcome and the laws, and a 2-year holding or probationary period while the laws go into effect is what I would propose.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
I think we need more information before we could approve of it, what the details are, and I don't think a ban is the right way to go with it right now, the 2-year.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Shutt.
This, however, the way that our state legislature has written this is our only opportunity, Councillor Osborne. We have until August 19th to act, and if we don't, then everything goes here. It's completely legal with no ban, as I recommended, or no moratorium, as Councillor Inman has recommended. So if we do nothing tonight, then this becomes law, and these service practitioners can move into town.
Councillor Brachu.
Okay, so doing nothing tonight doesn't preclude the option of coming back tomorrow night and doing something, right? So I want to make sure I clarify that.
Councillor Manager Amberg.
Doing nothing tonight means that you will not have a meeting tomorrow night because you will not have a second reading you to approve or deny an ordinance. You have to take action tonight to either select an ordinance or not select an ordinance.
So we take action.
And if you don't select an ordinance tonight, there's no reason for the meeting tomorrow.
I see. So we do have the option to change what we're going to do, though, is what I'm hearing.
If there's a motion on the floor and there's a second, you have to vote on it. If the vote goes down, then you can make another motion.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So my other comment is basically to echo the thoughts that I understand the concern, especially of the unknown. So when we don't know what we don't know, the unknown unknowns, right? Then the idea of, say, stop, make it all stop, and let's just be done, and whatever it is, tempting. But I think that that's a bad route to go. I think that we want more information, and we want to know more about how maybe other cities have been affected and how they work through it and such, so that when we make a decision for our small town, that we make a good decision. So I would be more in favor of a 2-year moratorium. So that's my thought.
Councillor Castillo.
Sure. So I am strongly agree with the ban because OHA has not completed the rulemaking process for implementing the state's psilocybin regulatory program and is uncertain how the manufacturing, delivery, and administration of this magic mushroom licensing facilities will operate, along with the manufacturers, the service centers, and prior to the state issuing those licenses. There are a lot of unknowns, like you just mentioned. But most of all, I believe that it is in the best interest of the healthy, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Crestwell that we ban this. The 2-year moratorium, in my opinion, is a gray area that we still can welcome the unknown. And I really feel that the citizens of Crestwell deserve to say yes or no to a ban. Much like our neighbors, Cottage Grove, are going. And I believe they said yes to marijuana. And now they're giving the option for a ban on this. So, and just one more thought is that I don't believe citizens will get to vote on time, place, and manner. They will get they will get to vote yes or no. And whatever the outcome of the decision the citizens make, I will fully support.
Councilor Osborne.
So if we vote yes on the ban, this brings it to the vote of the people. Correct?
If we pass either a 2-year moratorium or a prohibition, either way, we will then need to pass a resolution and it will go to the voters, yes, either one.
Okay.
If
I would like it to go to the vote of the people.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Inman.
Yes, so just clarification, so if the ordinance of the ban passes and the resolution and the voters say they don't want the ban, what's that end result?
The ordinance tonight is a decision by the city council to place a ballot measure before the people. If the people vote no on the ban, then there will be no prohibition. If they vote yes on the ban, then there will be a prohibition. If they vote no on a moratorium, then it'll be a no vote on the moratorium. So what you're doing tonight is not deciding for the people. What you're doing is you're deciding what are you going to put on the ballot.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to know if the community said no, where we were at with that. So
If
I
the
think you answered
communities,
that.
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Prachu.
It's a really good thing that Manager Amber just brought up, because I remember that during the marijuana initiative that the first time that it passed, or did not pass, I should say, it was a close vote, but the company that wanted to come in here was like, that was their talking point, is that people didn't understand what they were voting on. They were saying that a no vote meant yes, and a yes, meant no. So I think good clarification and whatever ballot measure you have is extremely important. And then I will just echo again that I think the moratorium is the way to go, because if we're going to trust the voters to make the decision in November this time around, then we can trust them again in 2 years to reevaluate after they've had some education and seen how it's affected other cities. So I think that it's a good time to it's a little different than the wait and see approach of not doing anything at all, because if you don't do anything at all and then just wait and see what happens, then, oh, great, we've already seen the effects or something like that. This wait and see approach is one that says we're gonna not do it, can't do it for 2 years, wait, watch, see, and then come back and reevaluate with the information that we get from that. So that's my leaning.
I don't understand that there will be any automatic. So here's the timeline that I'm seeing. November 8th would go for a vote. If it was a 2-year moratorium, that would go into effect 30 days after November 38, which is December something or another. So then you have a 2-year window, which puts it to December of 2024. At that point, it automatically, that moratorium is gone, it sunsets. So unless the council in the spring of 2024 decides to put forth a new resolution to place it on the ballot, it won't be on the ballot in 2024 unless the council takes action to do that. It will be sunsetted, and in December of 2024, it will be permitted. So the council would have a 2-year window to enact time, place, and manner restrictions. So I want to make a couple more comments, and then we're going to continue. As I read over the options, and Rebecca's still there, I think, right?
Yes. Yes, she's still there.
I'm still here, Mayor.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I read over the options. Option number 1 talked about that the council could prohibit one or both licensed manufacturers or licensed service center operators, 2 different things. And as I read through what the manufacturer involved, manufacturing is not allowed outdoors, so it would have to be some kind of indoor facility within the city limits of Crestwell. And I remember before we had the marijuana discussions, that many people were concerned about people growing in their backyard and things like that, and they didn't really want it in Crestwell being grown. So I thought it was an interesting option that we could prohibit the production of psilocybin in Crestwell without prohibiting service center operators. Which is kind of like saying, if we have licensed service center people in Crestwell who are trained to administer this product to people, that could happen in an approved location, but that the product itself could not be produced in Crestwell in any way. So that option intrigued me, because I think I hear many people in Crestwell saying, I don't want those mushrooms growing next door, or whatever that might mean. So that was something that intrigued me. The other thought was, if we want to give the people of Crestwell an opportunity just to say no, then it's only by a ban that they have that opportunity. Because a 2-year moratorium either way says yes. If they vote, and here's the confusion part you talked about. A 2-year moratorium, if you vote no, we don't want a 2-year moratorium, then we're saying in January, it can happen in Crestwell. If we vote yes, it means in December 2024, it'll happen in Crestwell. And it's difficult for the council to bring back another resolution and have another vote and convince the voters, you really don't want this, even though 2 years ago you voted you did want it. So to make it easy on the city, if you're simply saying vote yes or no, either we're going to have it or we're not going to have it, the only way you really do that is through a ban. So those are a couple thoughts I had. Councilor Castilla.
What was my question? Yes, and during that time of waiting for, back to the setting the time, place, and manner, we put a lot of hard work into setting time, place, and manner, and then it could all mean nothing when this all rolls out. So we basically would have to start from scratch and, as you say, bring back another resolution and convince the voters. And two, in regards to the manufacturing, how are they going to do this? There's a mention here of the chemicals and things that they'll be using. Where is that waste going to go? You know, we don't know. We don't know. How is it going into the dump, the dirt, our city water? We don't know. So it's just those are thoughts that add to the unknown. That's it.
So I'll throw another thought out there. Again, I'm trying to interpret what Rebecca's told us tonight. If the city were to put forth a ban, and it were to be voted yes on, banning it, then the city council could, at any time, if I'm reading this correctly, Rebecca, the city council, this is on page 2 of what you drafted for us, the third paragraph down. In other words, if the council decides to do nothing now and later psilocybin becomes an issue, the council could then refer an ordinance. But if the council were to put forth an ordinance banning it, the people were to vote yes in support of it, and let's say over the next 2 years before the next general election, a lot of information comes out, and we have a lot of members of the public come and say, now we're learning about this product. We think it needs to be service centers need to be allowed in Crestwell. We don't want it produced in Crestwell, but we want service centers. We want our people to have access to this product. The council could then put forth a new ordinance allowing it in Crestwell, establish time, place, manner prohibitions, and could also determine that it would be, service centers would be allowed in Crestwell, but it would not be allowed to be produced. So this council could create a new ordinance that the council felt very comfortable sometime prior to December 2024, and the council could then simply decide we're going to do this as an ordinance, and it wouldn't go before the people for another vote, or would it go for another vote if it was going to be changing the vote this year that approved a ban? Does that all make sense? So let's say the council put forward a ban. In November, it was voted yes. And then in the next 2 years, prior to the next general election, there's a lot of response from Crestwellians, more research is done, and the council has a change of heart and says, we really do want to allow this to be available in Crestwell. So we want to create a new ordinance that would allow it in Crestwell. Here's time, place, manner restrictions. The city council could itself, without another vote, enact a new ordinance. Is that correct?
Mayor, I think that if there is a ban in place, and then council, with more information, decides that it is in the best interest of the city to actually allow the uses, then that ordinance, well, first of all, the city could repeal what it had already done, so it could repeal the ban. I'm just going to pull up the statutes real quick here, because then to allow the uses, which the repeal does in itself, I apologize, I'm kind of thinking, this is a new way of thinking about this question, so let me find the statutes to kind of ground the question into. Here we go, sorry about that. I don't know why, my search engine wasn't cooperating with me. Okay, so the city may adopt ordinances to be referred to the electors that prohibit or allow the establishment of any one or more of the following in the area subject to the jurisdiction of the city. And it lists manufacturers or service centers. So the language, this is something else that's coming out as we're all trying to understand what the program means and how to interpret some of this. One of the things that's coming out is there's a lot of uncertainty or gray area in the statutes themselves. For instance, when you're asking what seems like it should be a very simple question to answer, if we have a prohibition in place and the statutes say we can repeal it, then that seems to me that we allow the uses. But in fact, when I read the statutes, it sounds as though prohibition or allowance of any one or more of the following would need to be put before the voters. So if you opt out, like a ban, a prohibition now would opt us out of the program, then later to opt back in, you would need to put an ordinance to allow those uses before the voters. That's what I'm seeing in the statutes as they're written. Again, it's a bit of a puzzle because we haven't practiced with these statutes at all yet.
So then a follow-up, if we opt for a 2-year moratorium, and then the city council decides that they want to enact a full ban prior to that moratorium, then that would need to go back to the voters in November 2024 as well. Either way.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Councilor Shutt.
I feel very passionate about this. I'm going to say something bold. The press is in the room. You may quote me. Why the hell can't people drive 9 miles north? I don't want this in our town. I don't want people that are hallucinating, driving cars while there's school buses on the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councilor Prachu.
I thought about that one myself. Is there like any scenario out there that I am not, thinking of, or we're in a situation where a person's proximity and availability to get it in Creswell would become important for some reason. So, for instance, say that somebody wants to seek this treatment and they're a resident of Creswell, and so it's a small ride from a friend or a family member or something like that to go and seek their treatment, stay, do whatever, and then get safely home, as opposed to now they've got to traverse and figure out how to get from wherever else. So something to consider, that there may be some things outside of our scope of understanding as to why it would become important for this service to be available in Creswell. I'm not saying that I know what that is. I'm just saying that maybe there's just more that we don't understand about that and why that would be important.
Councilor Shutt.
Thank you. I think our duty as counselors is to pass this ordinance unanimously and put it to the people with a vote. That's our duty. Let the people vote. If I'm totally okay if 90% of the people in Creswell disagree with me. I know that this has been used in end-of-life care by hospice practitioners. I know that it has value in some arenas, but Oregon Health Authority is a joke, and they have not figured out how these service centers will work. And it is irresponsible for us to just allow it without having our citizens vote.
Thank you. Councilor Castillo.
I know we spoke about all the work that they need to do, and did anyone get a chance to go to the link that was provided? Let me just read one little section here of what the work that needs to be done. The Oregon Psilocybin Service section will begin accepting applications for licensure on January 2nd, 2023. Until then, the Oregon Psilocybin Services section is in development period, working to build the nation's first regulatory framework for psilocybin services. This includes establishing rules by the end of the year, developing a psilocybin facilitator training program, approval system, and by the way, on there, all you need is a high school diploma to be a facilitator, license tracking and compliance case management system, securing and customizing a product tracking system, working online payments for licensees, GIS mapping for compliance work, an equity and justice-centered approach to background checks, continuing to hire for our licensees and compliance teams, setting processes and procedures for each of our programs, supporting the Oregon Psilocybin Advisory Board and subcommittees, keeping our website updated for access to important information, building partnerships with diverse communities, and creating education and training for our regulatory community and the public. And they're trying to get this all done by the end of the year. That's a lot to get done.
So I have kind of a follow-up question. Well, not really. Have we talked with other Creswellians in the last 2 weeks, since we first saw this, and got any kind of a feeling from our community about silo system. I mentioned to a few people, they said, kind of like me, silo what? We ordered this in 2020, also called magic mushrooms. We did? Yes. Oh, okay. So that was the response I got just from a few people. I'm curious whether others have a response from Cresswell and Councilor Castillo.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I spoke with 37 people. Not one had heard about it. But they all knew about the chicken plant, but not one had heard about this. And after discussion, everyone I spoke with had made up their own minds they would have been in favor of the ban.
Same thing here. I spoke to people at my congregation, at the local watering hole that I frequent, and my neighbors. As in my professional life, I door knock for business as a realtor, and not one person was in favor of this coming to town because we don't know what it looks like. That's why, because we don't know what it looks like. Also, I wanted to add one thing. My husband lived in Salem by a mushroom plant. This is supposed to be, not outdoor, it's supposed to be indoor. But comparable to chicken plant smell. And he was gonna try to be online today. I wanted to send in a comment, but he had to go up to Beaverton to train an employee. So he's not able to comment tonight, but it is amazing to me that chicken plant smell and chicken wastewater is such a big concern to the citizens, but no one is weighing in on this in public comment. It's really concerning to me. So let's put it to a vote. Let's do our job and let the citizens vote on it.
Other councilors, have you talked with folks? Misty? Councilor Inman?
Yes, kind of mixed, some for, some against. But I think it's definitely important for some kind of activity or action to happen. It seems like based on our conversation today that whatever avenue that there seems like there could be other things happen down the line that could change decisions or update or revise decisions. So I think it's important for it to go to the citizens.
Councilor Osborne?
I spoke to one person who thought that it had a use, as a medication to treat mental illness and PTSD problems that aren't responding to other things. That doesn't have anything to do with the actual producing the product here in town, but the availability of a product here or somewhere else.
Councilor Brochu?
So now we get back into clarifying questions. So I'm understanding a couple things here, or in a certain way, and I want to make sure that I have this wrapped around my mind wrapped around this properly. So in a situation with a ban, then council votes and say we pass it, that goes to the voters, and then that becomes the thing, and it is literally a ban that can be undone by the council, right? So we've heard that.
But it would need to go back to the voters again, if I'm understanding Rebecca correctly.
Okay, so.
If the council wants to undo the ordinance, it would have to go back to the voters for.
At first we were hearing it was that the council could just undo it on their own, but now is that, so let's clarify that for sure. That would go back to the voters. And it sounds to me like maybe that's the way that it will have to be anyway. Because it's also sounding like we might have to approve it in 2 years if we were to do like a moratorium, so. So that's a question for you, Rebecca.
I'd unmute myself, thank you. Yeah, so when I first was talking with you all this evening, I was saying that council may prohibit the use, put that before the voters, if they say, yes, we want to prohibit the use, the prohibition is on the books. But then if something were to change, political will changed, or we know more and there's community support to overturn the prohibition, council can repeal that prohibition. They can repeal that ordinance. But I'm looking at the statutes again, because I just read to you all the part in the statutes where it says to prohibit or allow those uses, that the ordinance needs to be adopted by council and put before the voters to vote. Now I'm looking at the section of the statute that talks about repeal. And it's the city may repeal an ordinance that prohibits the establishment of any one or more of the following: the manufacturer, the service center. And if the governing body, the city, repeals an ordinance under this section, the governing body must provide the text of the ordinance to OHA, so that OHA can start licensing, essentially is what that means, these uses within the city. So that's what one section of this program says in statute, but then as I read earlier, another section indicates that potentially to prohibit and to allow, the voters need to weigh in.
So we still really don't know tonight then what way that would play out.
That particular issue, looking at it in this particular way, has not come up in any of the other council meetings I've had on this issue. Lots of other issues have come up, but that particular question hasn't. And when I'm looking at it right now, live and in the moment, I read that there could be some ambiguity about what would be required. And I think, something to go back to is that the program is considered to be a blanket opt-in program across the state. And to go against that blanket opt-in takes action by the voters, approval by the voters.
So that was actually kind of one of my points in thinking about all of this, is that we could take an action tonight and saying that we're going to put this before the voters. And if it's a ban, then voters would approve it, but potentially council could undo it, or potentially would require the voters to do it. So that's something to kind of think about, is that we're talking about putting the power of the decision to the voters in November. How do they undo it? Do the voters undo it, or does the council undo it, or is it both thing? That's something to think about as we're voting tonight. So.
Okay, are we ready to have a motion? We have a motion, and we have a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? All right, City Recorder, Roberta, would you please read the motion to us?
Councilor Shuck moved and read twice by title, and Councilor Castillo seconded the motion that the City Council adopt ordinance number 552, an ordinance declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin, however you say that word. Psilocybin products.
All right, we have a motion, it's been read. Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. You're the only one who didn't vote.
Am I not understanding the motion correctly? We're voting on the ban?
The motion is to approve the ban.
What did you vote?
All right, let's vote again. The motion is to approve what was presented to us, which is ordinance 552, an ordinance declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Same sign, all right, the motion does not pass. So, the floor is open for an additional motion.
It's not.
Yes, we voted no on this ban. We can now discuss any other ban or prohibition we'd like to and make a motion on it. Such
You
as
voted-
the moratorium.
You voted in favor of the ban. 5 of
No.
you voted in favor of it.
It's an ordinance and must pass unanimously. It did not pass,
That's right, on the first reading. Now you're going to go to the second reading
which would be tomorrow.
tomorrow night.
So
And if it passes on the second reading, then it passes.
Yes, but we, the council, can also bring forward any other motions on this item that you would like to.
No, you cannot. You've already voted and this is the motion passed.
No, the motion did not pass. To pass, it has to be unanimous.
No, does not have to be, to pass with one reading, it has to be unanimous.
Yes. So this motion,
It passed. It passed the first reading.
well, and I'm going to defer to our attorney since we have her here. Rebecca, you're still there? So, Michelle, state your understanding and then,
The vote was 5-1 in favor of the motion, therefore the motion passed. However, the ordinance did not pass because it was not unanimous, so it has to go to a second reading. And we're going to have a special meeting tomorrow to have a second reading. That's correct.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. If we were just reviewing the ordinance this evening and had to pass it in one single meeting, then it would fail because it didn't pass unanimously. But we have the special meeting to have the second reading and have it voted on again by the council.
so then my question for you, Rebecca, is does that prohibit the council from continuing this discussion and bringing forth any additional motions to be voted on?
Yes, because you, the
Well,
motion,
I'm asking this question of our attorney. And we're already discussing council procedures here.
no, you're discussing Robert's Rules of Order.
Rebecca, I'm asking you for your weigh in on this, please.
Yes, I'm looking at the charter right now, and the default method to adopt an ordinance is to have it considered on 2 different days. So today would be day 1, and tomorrow at the special meeting would be day 2. We've had 1 reading, 1 vote on the ordinance. And it passed. It didn't pass sufficiently unanimously for a single meeting, but it survives for a second day following the more usual legislative process.
So then that ends the discussion of this item for tonight. So that,
Yes.
okay, so the council cannot have any further discussion of this particular item. And therefore, we don't have any discussion of the resolution either tonight.
You may consider the resolution. It's a twin necessity with the ordinance. It goes with it. It is the mechanism to refer the ordinance to voters and to adopt a ballot title. So if the resolution were not to be adopted, then the ordinance wouldn't go forward to the voters. It's the mechanism required to do that, to accomplish that.
Okay, so my last question, the council could not put forward a different motion tonight to be voted on that could pass unanimously, or if it not pass unanimously, then that would also go to the special meeting tomorrow night. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
I believe that we would have needed to set this up maybe differently before voting on the ordinance, the ban. Since we've already voted on that and it passed, then any other possibility is sort of foreclosed at this point because we have a surviving piece of legislation that's moving on to its next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. I stand corrected. Thank you, Manager Amber. All right, Councilor Pratchett.
All right, so that is a little bit different than what I was expecting, because I think that was one of the things that I was trying to clarify was whether we would be able to actually vote on something different than what was being presented to us this evening. So my question then is now, can we revote? Can we?
The only way you can revote under Robert's Rules of Order is if the motion maker agrees that the motion needs to be restated, and the person who made the second also agrees, so they have to withdraw their motion. But you've already voted on it, and I don't know, the vote carries.
Can you clarify that? Because I do think that's not a question of Robert's Rules of Order. Can you clarify that? Can the motion be undone by the council with the motion maker and when seconded it?
After a vote.
I do agree with the city manager on that direction from Robert's Rules of Order.
But my bet would be to pass an ordinance, if it fails at the first reading, if it's not unanimous at the first reading, our charter states, governing rule, one or the other, I've read it, that it must be brought back to a second reading at a subsequent meeting. So I would think that we cannot undo that. Our own rules say it must come to a second meeting for a second reading.
With all due respect, it did not fail the vote. It passed the vote.
Passed, it just was
What
not.
failed was that our charter allows for a unanimous vote in one meeting. So it did not get a unanimous vote at this meeting, so it has to go to a second meeting. But it passed the vote.
So it sounds like you're saying the answer is no to Kevin, it will come back tomorrow night at a special meeting.
That's correct.
Councilor Castillo?
Tomorrow's meeting will not require a unanimous decision, correct?
No, you are correct.
No, it will require a majority, just like tonight's was a majority vote.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Castillo? Councilor Pratchett, excuse me.
So first of all, I want to apologize to council. I'm going to drag you back here again tomorrow night because of the misunderstanding of what I thought we were going to be able to do with this. I voted no because I thought that we were going to have the option to massage this a little bit and do something different. So that's maybe a lesson learned. So I just put that out there.
So I have another question for Rebecca. I was under the same impression as Kevin, that we would have an option to massage it, work it over, maybe create something different, some other options. But once the motion was made and seconded, we're required to vote. While the vote passed tonight, it wasn't unanimous. So is the only way that we could have continued the discussion if the vote would have failed tonight? By a 2 yes and a 4 no vote? I mean, how can we as a council massage something, work it over, make some adjustments, say no to one, and maybe say yes to another? How does that work process-wise?
Well, I think maybe one possibility would be to take a vote on whether the council intended to pass the ordinance in a single meeting, and maybe before you got there, maybe ask or poll the council for alternatives to be considered, and see if any alternatives received a motion and a second to be discussed or voted on.
So you're saying first to have a vote not on an ordinance, but to have a vote on whether the council intends to pass it in a single meeting? Because that sounds like a vote on the ordinance.
I guess just to clarify that the vote was for the intent of passing that single meeting. And maybe that would be more clear if you only had one meeting to adopt an ordinance, and then the opportunity was not there to do a second meeting like there is in this case.
It's all a little bit confusing. Councilor Pratchett?
See you guys tomorrow night.
Okay, so, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is letter D, adoption of the City of Creswell Economic Development Strategic Plan, 2022-2027, Manager Amber.
Thank you, Mayor. Work has been done on, work was started over a year ago on a economic development plan for the city of Creswell. And we have worked with Jacob Callister at LCOG on putting together the recommended plan. And so he's here tonight, and he was going to walk you through some of the points in the plan and how it was put together and where we go from here. So Jacob?
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you for hanging in there.
Oh, sorry, can you see me? Hear me?
Yeah, thank you for hanging in there.
Oh, that's absolutely, yeah. No, I will try to be succinct here as well, just keeping that in mind. So thank you, Mayor, thank you, councilors. Appreciate the opportunity to share with you tonight some of the work that we were able to do with your staff and some of you and the community. So I'm going to just share my screen here, if that's okay and possible, hope so, and just kind of quickly provide an overview of the project. And hopefully you can see that. We're seeing that. If someone could give me an audible, yep, that would be helpful. Okay. So just really quickly, I'm just going to give an overview. We want to talk about the engagement, so the process that we undertook to put the strategy together. And then just really at a high level orient you to essentially how the strategic plan works. So we won't go over everything in detail, but kind of give you some examples of how it is intended to work. So we had an advisory group, names that you see up here. Councilor Clark was the representative from City Council. We had Planning Commission representation. We had business owners in the area. We had state agency representatives. We had some nonprofit representatives. Project team was Michelle, Maddie, Phillips, until recently a Creswell staffer, Curtis Thomas, myself, Rachel Dorfman is another LCOG employee, and then Shelley Humble with the airport. We worked with 9 different focus group and interview groups, and I'll give you a sense for those in a second here. The crux of the purpose of this was that comprehensive planning in Oregon requires that communities undertake economic development planning under Goal 9, and the way that the state really constitutes that formally is an economic opportunities analysis, which some or all of you might be familiar with. It's very quantitative, it's very prescriptive, it's very specific. It's something, frankly, that a lot of consultants can do away from the community, outside of the community, using readily available information, census, state data. And the city said, what we really need for this economic opportunities analysis is some Crestwell information, some of the Crestwell story, the Crestwell values, the Crestwell needs, the Crestwell vision, and the Crestwell story. So this is really about adding some qualitative components to that effort. And in the process, developing a strategic plan which has a shorter, nearer term purpose. So as you can see here, there's kind of a dual purpose to it. One is this 5-year economic development work plan. This is something that gives direction to staff, again, in the shorter term. And then it also feeds in some learnings and some recommendations for the economic opportunities analysis, which ultimately is required for urbanization steps, so anything related to the UGB and comp plan amendments around things like buildable lands and housing needs analysis, and then of course the UGB analysis. So stakeholder engagement, you can see these different groups here that we engaged with. We had interviews with 3 to 6 members in these different categories. You can see the examples there. We also reached out to what we call peer communities, so communities that seem to represent some interesting potential learnings. We reached out and had interviews with representatives from those communities. We did what's called an environmental scan, so a SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis with every one of these groups. That was one of the key steps that we took. So you can see some strengths here. Obviously, this is what's called a word cloud or a word map. So this words that are larger are things that were mentioned more frequently. So you can see weaknesses, some of the opportunities, and some of the threats that were pretty consistently referenced. So this is information that is really well documented in the appendix of the strategic plan. There's a pretty healthy appendix document. The plan itself is fairly succinct and to the point. Here's some of the things that we heard from peer community interviews. Having a community-defined vision is a useful tool. Local champions and continuity and leadership is important. Getting something done early is important and provides momentum. Building relationships with the local business community is important. The city should be ready to take some risks. Good timing has a lot to do with success. So, and one of the things I think that happens in these, we had Michelle on a lot of these conversations and your other staff, and so that's relationship building is an important part of that exercise, as well as the information you hear from some of those peers. We also had a virtual community open house. So this was something that was open between March 23rd and April 1st. It was an opportunity to put the documents, the materials out there. We had a video presentation that introduced the project, and then we asked questions, so sort of an interactive survey. We got 100 interactions with the open house, so that was something that we were pleased with. That means 100 independent visits to that page. The analysis and concept development, it's a pretty standard strategic plan, so it has components that you're probably familiar with in other plans that you've seen. Establishing a vision, establishing goals, objectives, and actions to accomplish that vision, applying priority to those. The very act of establishing those creates the priority. Trying to distinguish time frames, so near term and long term. And then trying to balance aspiration and practicality. So we had some really good checks from our advisory group and from staff and others to keep that goals and those objectives and actions in a practical frame, but also an aspirational. So trying to balance, progress with really achievable goals. The vision was assembled based on core values that were provided by our outreach. So sustainable, livable quality of life, competitive entrepreneurial opportunities, those all fed into this vision. This became the proposed vision statement in the document. Crestwell has a competitive, so this is a vision for the future, right? Crestwell has a competitive and self-sustaining economy. supports entrepreneurs, it provides access to economic opportunity, creates an environment for businesses to be successful, and encourages a high quality of life for residents. The goal is to support that, really more or less follow those different focus group categories: economic resilience, business climate, entrepreneurship and workforce, leveraging assets and opportunities, a vibrant downtown, and infrastructure and land use. So it's just a way to organize the objectives and the actions into clear sort of goal statements and categories. So this is just one example. But again, you see there are 6 goals. They have multiple objectives, and those have multiple actions. This is just to provide an example of how it's laid out. So the economic resilience goal as such is Creswell has a resilient, diverse, self-sustaining local economy that supports local businesses and enables residents to achieve quality of life. Objective 1.1 is to actively encourage and attract family wage jobs for the market as a whole. And then one of the actions, I'll read the second action: support landowners by marketing the city's available employment land to industries investors best able to provide living wage employment opportunities. So you have some guiding objectives, an overarching goal, and then some actions that become part of a work plan for staff and for the community to follow. So another example, jumping to goal 5, Creswell has an attractive, human-centered, walkable downtown that is economic, that is the economic and cultural center of the community and draw for visitors. So an objective is to consider tools that are available for catalytic outcomes to transform downtown and achieve the vision established in the downtown plan. And then one of the examples is to identify opportunities for public-private partnerships related to beautification. So part of this is really clarifying and outlining, again, functionally what becomes a directive from city leadership to staff to be a work plan. One of the other things, and this is included in the appendix, is that although what you see in the work plan is elements that were really culled and cultivated for this kind of near-term view and passed through that practicality and aspirational lens, and also just is this something that the city proper should be responsible for? There were lots of other ideas that were shared that were great ideas that were identified either as having sort of a different time frame or as having a different responsible party. So those were gathered in there and collected and assembled. Some of them were specifically called out for the economic opportunities analysis, which is something that will have to be formally assembled, updated, and adopted. And there is a memorandum that we put together as staff that provides a crosswalk between the process that we undertook in this planning exercise around economic development strategy that specifically relates to economic opportunities analysis. So in a lot of ways, there's more longer term policy implications. There are actions and strategies that relate to longer term. A lot of it is around land availability, land preparation, so that the things that when you're doing economic opportunities analysis, you are looking for the information from the community to provide you. So this is intended to be a docking point for that. So that's really an overview of the process and an overview of the product itself. It's about a year in coming. We had a wonderful, I think, engagement model. We had tremendous support from city staff, from a planning commission member, a city council member, and then members of your community. And so I'm happy to field the questions that you might have about the process or the deliverable. And at this point, we're presenting the plan to the city council for consideration for adoption.
Okay, so council members, we have questions for Jacob. Thank you, Jacob. Councilor Shuck.
I just have one question, Jacob. The objectives are listed 1 through 6. Is that in order of priority or just they each are equal in importance?
They are equal in importance. Yeah, there's no indication, there was no deliberate ordering, and there's no indication in the plan that the sequence is a priority. So it's how they were, it's just how they appeared in the plan, so.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very excited about 5 and 6, so I wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
Gotcha, yep. As important as any of the others, yep.
Other counselors? Counselor Pratchu?
I don't really have any questions, but more of a comment that's something that can, the council ought to just kind of keep in their minds. And maybe someone could speak to it if they're willing to, but they don't have to tonight. But one of the things that I noted was that it appears that Crestwell's local police force is, because it's not a local police force or something, was brought up as something that could potentially limit economic development. Is that an accurate statement?
I can answer that one. It was a perception.
Okay.
It's not necessarily an accurate statement. I think our police force does a good job, and I think, but there were concerns that we don't have a 24-hour-a-day policing model. But I think it was more just a perception than anything else.
Okay, because I know that that's something that we've actually worked pretty hard on, and actually the additional of another deputy last year was partially in response to that concern. So I just wanted to make sure that the fact that we contract for our police service versus having our own police force wasn't somehow limiting us as in our economic development. So thank you.
I think I'll piggyback just one quick point, is that we wanted to be fully transparent about the feedback that we got. So the appendix provided a thorough summary of our strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats exercised with each of the groups. And then sort of it becomes assembled. There's summaries, and then there's finally what appears in the plan. We wanted to make sure that folks understood where that journey came from. So things that you find sort of in those initials, that was just a bunch of people talking things through, and sometimes there was a point, counterpoint. So it was a good discussion.
So following up on that, it's in page 20 of the stakeholder engagement, about the 8th and 9th bullet point down, safety/security concerns, no local police. So that's reflective of a comment that was made, but not reflective of anything accurate. Because that word local, you know, if we're talking about a city-owned police, we don't have that.
Right, it
Do we have local? So that's just a comment.
It was just a comment that was made. It's not based on any sort of data or any sort of analysis. It was just a perception.
Okay. Okay. Other comments? Questions? Councilor Pratchu.
I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't actually just say well done, good job. The team to actually do all this work, it's a lot of work. It's bigger than our main strategic plan, I think, for the city. So I realize that there's a ton of work that goes into this. So I want to thank, of course, all of the folks involved, including participants, staff members, consultants, and all for a job well done.
Thank you, Kevin. I have an observation as I read through this. A couple observations. When I looked at the interviews on page 5, peer communities with similar economic context, I thought sisters. Similar economic context? I didn't think so myself. Madras? I wonder why we didn't look at Veneta, Junction City, or Sutherland. Sutherland right on the I-5 corridor, virtually the same size, virtually the same kind of population growth over the last 20 years. Junction City and Veneta both virtually the same size within our county. So I was kind of curious why we made the decision on Sisters, Madras, Independence, and SDK, which is in the suburb of Portland.
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit, maybe Michelle could as well. It was a group effort that arrived at those, though individuals had suggestions. I will say that the sisters' conversation in some ways became clear very quickly that it was a different creature, and I don't know that anybody was surprised by that, but some of it was looking at, again, this balance of aspirational and practical, seeing what they had done most recently. I think there were some pretty interesting things that they had pursued, but in some ways establishing clearly an example that is not where you're headed, and confirming, okay, that's not something that we really have the scenario to pursue. There's definitely ideas about communities that had very recently seen within the last 10 years, like just the kind of Independence and Monmouth had this experience in economic development that was exemplary and has stood out and had offered up some ideas, and I think provided some really useful ideas. Estacado provided this community that was adjacent to a larger metropolitan community that was trying to establish its balance of that classic bedroom versus independent versus looking at that tension. Madras had had some very interesting airport developments, so the airport in particular was very interesting to see the kind of wins that they'd had and how they had done that. So each of them kind of had their little angle. I don't disagree that talking to the other Lane County and nearby partners would have been useful. We had a number that our scope essentially capped us at, and those conversations aren't terribly difficult to have, and it seems that the communities that we spoke with really welcomed the opportunity to share and kind of learn. And so I would think the community should continue to reach out to those other communities and share those ideas.
Then I had one other observation thought as I was reading through the plan, which I did think was very, very well put together. Compliments to you and to everyone who put it together. So as I read through some of the goals 1 through 6, here's a few things I pulled out. Objective 1.1, actively encourage and attract family wage jobs for the market as a whole. Identify, incorporate, and manage support for employers and industries that are community partners that offer high-quality employment at living wage. Bullet point 2, support landowners by marketing the city's available employment land to industries and investors. Objective 1.2, look for shovel-ready sites and market them. Goal 2.1, proactively work to identify 20-year supply of employment lands. That became a theme. Establish a clear brand for Crestwell. That was 4.1. And then under 6.3, maintain and or establish relationships with owners and jointly define and reduce barriers. And then on the back page, I just wrote down 2 words that I think Michelle said, land availability and shovel ready. And as I put all this together, and one of the things I thought of was when you talk about establishing a brand, Crestwell has changed significantly in the last 20 years to where much of the population lives here but gets up every day and drives Eugene or Springfield or Cottage Grove for work. When I moved here in 1982, Crestwell was known as a mill city and as the home of Furcrest Farms. That was Crestwell. We had schools. Our largest employer was Furcrest and the mills. 20-some years later, and when I moved here, the mill here at Baldwin was open and operating, and we moved into an apartment on F Street. And I can remember in the heat of the summer having the windows open at night and hearing the sound all through the night of the mill, and I could not sleep. And there was an odor emitted from the mill. It was its own unique odor. As there was an odor emitted from Fir-Crest, which was its own unique odor. But that was the brand of Cresswell. That's what Cresswell was known as. We had 3 mills, we had a chicken plant, we had schools. That was basically Cresswell. Now it's changed 20 years later. But as I read through all these things, I thought of, in terms of lands, industries, things that are good community partners. Fir-Crest Farms was a great community partner in Cresswell. We had a very active FFA program at that time. One of the leaders in the state of Oregon, one of the best in the state of Oregon. And they had huge support from Fir-Crest. Multiple times of the year, they would have a barbecue in the bank parking lot. I see we have our bank president here tonight. The bank would open up on a Saturday or Sunday. Some of you remember, they'd have big, huge barbecue pits out there, and Fir-Crest would donate all these chicken. And we would go have barbecue, pick up barbecue. So they were a great community partner for many, many of the events that were held in Cresswell. We relied upon Fir-Crest to donate chicken and all kinds of other products they did. So as I read through this and I thought of the lands in Cresswell, we have great hopes for Bald Knob. We're working on right-of-way access. That's a huge hope. There's this big piece of land there. We would like to see all kinds of industry established over there, providing family wage jobs. On this side of town, in the counties, not in the city limits, so the county will have a lot more jurisdiction over that than the city will have. We have a big piece of land with a very old and decrepit facility on there, much like the old and decrepit facilities over here. We have the potential of a big piece of land there, producing all kinds of jobs, all kinds of products that are grown here in the Willamette Valley. It could be a great partner for Cresswell. So as I read through our own plan, and I saw many of the elements, and one of the things it said the city needs to work with, partner with. In the same way as we say we want to work with and partner with whoever might come over here, if the people who own this piece of land say it's our land, we own it, we're in the county, we're going to do all the zoning to make sure it works just right, and we'd like to think they've become a great person we can partner with, communicate with. Our own community plan, as I read it through, those are the two things that came to my mind. So I just wanted to throw that out there for you to hear. All right, other council comments or questions to Jacob or to Michelle about this item? If not, it's before us to vote on. Now, I talked to Michelle earlier and said, this is a huge document. We just got it over the weekend. If the council's not ready to adopt it tonight, is there any harm in bringing it back for the September council meeting? Michelle said no. So council, it's up to you. If there's a motion on the floor, we will act on that motion. If there is no motion, we could decide with the council that we want to postpone this to the September council meeting to act on. So council, what is your will? Would you like to postpone it or would you like to vote on it tonight? Norma? Councilor Osborne?
I would like to put the vote off until September.
Okay. Others would like to weigh in? Councilor Shuck?
I read it. I think it's great. I'm ready to make a motion.
Got your microphone on.
I read it. It's great. I'm happy to make a motion.
All right. Others who would like to weigh in on whether we act on it tonight or move it to the September council meeting? All right, I'm going to look for heads up. Do you want to move it to the September council meeting? All right, then I'm entertaining a motion on this item. Councilor Shuck.
I move that the City Council adopt the City of Cresswell Economic Development Strategic Plan for 2022 through 2027.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Councilor Inman has a second on the motion. Any further discussion? All right, council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Jacob, for all of your work and for being here tonight.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you, Michelle, and your staff for all the work over the last long period of time.
We've got a lot of work ahead of us.
Yes, okay, we move to item E, which is council approval to authorize city manager Amber to accept and sign the 2021 and 2022 core and the 2022 and 2023 FAA VIL grants when awarded to complete the north taxi lane improvements, design and construction. Is this Shelley or Jim? Looks like it's Shelley. Hello, Shelley.
As they say, great things come last, so I'm so excited to be here. So before you tonight, the airport was very successful in requesting core grants in 2021 to start on part of our strategic planning for the airport to build taxi lanes so that we can build hangars. Unfortunately, it was always, we had the grants but didn't have the match. So we were always trying to figure out how we were going to get the match to get at least one taxi lane in. To that end, we decided we'd take a chance in 2022 and apply for another grant for the second taxi lane for the project, and we were successful again. And then along comes the bipartisan bill, the last COVID money that we received, and the airport was notified that we will receive $159,000 every year for 5 years. So we are able to utilize that money as a match for the core grant. So being able to put the utilities in and the 2 taxi lanes, we will be able to get this project done at no cost to the airport. And then we should have 3.5 or 3 3/4 years of $159,000 that will go towards building our first row of T hangars.
Okay.
Which is absolutely awesome, because I got word the last couple of days that Eugene is moving ahead and they will be in the process of tearing down most of the general aviation hangars that they have on the field. So we will have lots of call for hangars on our airport. So I'll answer any questions if you have them.
All right, council, question for Shelley. Councilor Inman.
Well, I don't have a question, just a comment. This is great. Good work to get those grants in and completed and getting it all figured out.
I'm working towards a goal of having the most grants open at any given time. Because I need my head examined, but that's okay.
All right, I do have a question. So I'm looking at the map.
Yes, sir.
And I'm reading this over. This is the north taxi lane is what we're putting a lot of this money towards, right?
That's what we're calling the project, yes.
When I look at the map, I see a little airplane here, it looks like on the runway or taxi lane or something, and then all the hangars, and at the bottom of the abbreviation it says TOFA, TSA, Taxi Lane Object Free Area and Taxi Lane Safety Area. But when I look at the map, I don't see any of those designations. So can you point out to me what I'm looking at and where this grant money is going and what we're doing with it based upon the map?
So where the airplane is stationary in the center,
Yes.
that pavement area is called the apron. There's 39 tie downs. We never utilize all tie downs. They were put in with FAA money 30 plus years ago, so we are well within our rights to redesign that area. So we will be taking out the first row of tie downs to utilize the taxi lanes. The blue taxi lanes is what your money is going to be doing. And then that will make way for the T hangars to be built. And the taxi lane object free area is actually not in this specific photo.
So this big piece of land
Yes.
is called the apron.
Correct.
And there's 39 tie downs?
There is 39 tie downs.
And we're going to wipe out some of them.
Correct.
In order to do what?
To extend the taxi lane to build the hangars.
So the taxi lane is here, the blue here,
which is correct, the blue.
and it's going to be extended this way,
It's going to take out the first row of taxi lanes,
right
or
here,
I'm sorry, of tie-downs.
like right here.
Yes.
And that's going to allow more T-hangers right in here,
It's going to allow us to build a longer row of T-hangers.
okay?
And then, so where you see the 3 airplanes, it's going to take out that row of tie-downs.
Right here.
Right, correct.
And then the taxi lane actually goes this way.
Well, the apron goes east. The taxi lane is the one where you got the small squares, the aprons on the
Yeah.
east part. You see the blue?
Right here?
Yes.
Is
That is a current taxi lane that we're gonna add, that we're gonna connect to for that one row of
Go ahead and
T-hangers.
have a tour.
So T-hangers are back-to-back, so you need a taxi lane on both sides. But you get more hangers in a row of T-hangers. So we will be able to get, I think it's 11 T-hangers in that first T-hanger row. We are going to put a bathroom on the end for the north end users. And then the second one, the middle one, will also be another 11 T-hanger units. And the one closest to the road, closest to I-5, is going to be squares so that we can attract some more, some commercial or business jet type aircraft. So they will only open to the east and they will be squares. So they'll be 40 by 50s or 50 by 60s.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? I think we're good. So this is, council, you're voting to authorize city manager Amber to complete the paperwork. Correct? Complete the paperwork. Okay, I'm entertaining a motion on this item. Councilor Castillo.
I move that the City Council authorize City Manager Michelle Amber to complete the 2021 and 2022 core grant and the 2022 and 2023 FAA BIL grant paperwork associated with the funding and completion of the North Taxi Lanes improvements, design and construction.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second from Councilor Osborne. Any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Brings us to number 7, upcoming meetings and events. And the first one is tomorrow night. So as was noticed, tomorrow night the agenda will be to have a second reading of the ordinance, followed by a vote. If the ordinance passes, then we will move directly into the resolution, which will also be voted on. That is the sole agenda tomorrow night. So we set that for 6 o'clock. I had to do that today so that we didn't have to call a meeting tonight, and then we'd be coming at 10 o'clock tomorrow night. So it has to be 24 hours. So that's why that happened like that. And we're trying to accommodate our staff who work till 5, and we just can hang a little bit longer. So that's 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Other upcoming meetings are here listed, and with that, we are adjourned. Or the meeting is over. You may approach me if you'd like to, sure. The meeting's over. But if you'd like to visit with me, I'd be glad to visit with you. I can come down there. How's that?